Because every time in history that there's been this huge bureaucratic thing that everyone just thinks will blow over, some dude or woman with a big mouth with an alternative opinion goes, that's enough.
For a long time, I felt the army let me down, but the answer is it's life. Sometimes you have everything and it just gets taken from you. And it's how you respond to it. You can either be the fool or you can be the hero. So.
And that's to my last point. You got to take the leap.
Ambushing because you're manipulating. So, yeah. So, look, here's what I want to talk about today, if you're game. I want to, I think as the founders are listening to you, I think there's some tools in the toolkit that I want to get to on their behalf. But before I do, I want to open with a broad question to you. And that is,
I'll ask you a question first.
Please, yeah, please.
What have you learned about founders in the last few weeks that you didn't know, that shocked you?
I mean, that question, I could take the next 45 minutes and not stop talking. I've learned that founders are fundamentally creative in a way that I didn't understand. And I have a creative side to my life. I've written books. I write poetry. I'm interested in my creative inner life. But I never thought of myself as a founder because I don't really think of myself as founding anything. When in fact, I've been a founder all my life. And in business, I've been a founder. A different kind of founder than you and to those who are listening to you, no doubt. But I've learned that creatives are compelled, they're driven, they're trapped. And they're trapped because their creativity requires them to interface and acknowledge and leverage non-creatives. And that's a very, very hard place. And that's where and why I've not thought of myself as a founder, because writing my books or poems or having a deep and disciplined inner life and inner creative life has not required me to interface with non-creatives. By the time I'm ready to sell a book, I'll get an agent and I'll let that agent do the work. So what I've learned is that creatives are isolated, they're brilliant, they're trapped, they're in despair, they're imperiled, and they're the luckiest people on the planet. And I didn't really see them until I started listening to you talk about them and about you. I didn't really understand the depths of that despair and that exhilarating capacity to transform the world. So that's a high-level shot. I can go into lots of detail sometime, but this is about you, not me.
Why do you think they're lucky?
They're lucky because they never have to ask themselves, ultimately, what's my purpose in the world? They never stare at the wall and say to themselves, I don't know why I'm here. They will say, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know how I got myself here. But the creativity creates a purpose that is so deep and so sustainable that they are not subject to the kind of neurosis of people who live lives of quiet despair and who are doing nothing in their lives but maneuvering and managing and trying to get ahead. The creative is in touch with spirit, and spirit is abiding. And those who aren't in touch with spirit suffer because they think it's what they can gain, what they can get, what they can achieve, what they can have. I want the dog. I want the pool. I want the land. The creative is looking at a world that can be better. That's a powerful, powerful safety they have, and it makes them very, very lucky, even as they are cursed. And all great, lucky people are cursed.
Right. When people get food dropped off from Uber or they get a coffee, people say thank you. Why do you think no one says thank you to the founder after they've delivered the value, or really at all through the whole journey?
Right. I think it's
Anyone
related.
thank them?
Listen, when I walked with Joseph Ayoun, the president of Northeastern, after doing work with him in higher ed, he asked me, what observations do I have about the world of higher education? And I said, I only have two observations. The first one is no one really asks a question in higher ed, because to ask a question is to imply you don't know. And knowing is the currency of success in higher ed. IP is the currency of success. So there's no real curiosity. But the second one is far, far more important. That is, there's no gratitude. No one ever says thank you in higher ed, ever. Now, when I think about the business world of founders, startups, the same thing is true. There is no ability to say thank you because the founder is doing something quite extraordinary, almost holy. However neurotic, however dysfunctional, however impatient, however arrogant, however bullying the founder is, they're doing something holy. And it fundamentally scares all those who are trying to assist or leverage or outmaneuver that founder. And so when they create value, saying thank you is somehow an acknowledgement of the other's inability to do what the founder has done. It's crazy, but it's human.
And my last question is, what do you mean by holy?
Holiness is, the natives call it nessness. The fox has its foxness. The hawk has its hawkness. Tom has his tomness. That nessness, that essence, that's holy. That's divinity. And if we can live inside the nessness of that, if we can live inside the holiness that we've been granted by having that essence, we can learn and observe when we slip out of that, when we become maneuvering, when we become impatient, when we become petulant, when we become aggrieved, when we become blaming, when we become sorrowful. We can see that we're slipping out of that holiness. But when we're doing the work, when I think about you, Tom, you're the finest enterprise salesperson I've ever seen. And do you know why? Because you're not a salesman. You never sold a thing in your life. It has nothing to do with selling. You may use the language of selling. We may talk about it in the next 45 minutes about the language of selling. But in reality, what you are is someone who wants to move, to bring people towards nessness and towards what's possible. And it's not just efficiency or profit or a better world. It's a truer, more authentic, more honest, more open world. And that's what is holy. And many of your founders who are listening to you right now are inside that holiness and don't know it. And the world is trying to tell them it is not holy. And that's what you need, and your founders need to understand. The world is trying to tell you that they know best, and that what you're doing is a subset of what needs to happen, when in fact what you're doing is the thing that needs to happen, and the rest of us are passionate handmaidens to assist and thank the founder for the journey.
You use the word divine. The highest form of beauty is divinity, and there's a term about true beauty is terrifying. Like it terrifies people, because it can shake them in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Do you think, someone like Da Vinci created all of this beauty and has gone through this process? Do you think people told him he was wrong?
All the time. All the time. I mean, that his own psychic survival depended on being able to survive the fact that everyone jockeyed around him and tried to take what he knew, but dismissed most of what he did as absolutely fantastical and outrageous. And the first way that Da Vinci got appreciated was in a very limited series of artworks and imaginations that later society looked at and said it's inventive, but he was still not seen as the whole, as the holy. Think about whole and holy. Holy is whole. I mean, it's interesting. Remember, think about the Bhagavad Gita, where. Oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go.
Well, I'm just trying to dig here. Do you think the same story's playing out, or do you think this time, due to being able to control a lot of people through technology and a centralization of data and power in very few, is going to eliminate? Like, a founder is going to survive this time?
Listen, the question for me, the way to answer that question is, are you going to survive this time? I think that the end of one is the end of all. I think you are an example of a founder, hard fighting your own survival, looking for peace where you know it's not available, looking to help and participate where you know sometimes it's not received. And are you in your own way? You betcha. And do you make some things harder? You betcha. But your survival matters. And we are in an age of two things that are directly related to the success and imperilment of founders. And that's technology and money. And the people with money who the founder needs in order in some ways to grow, they are not creative, and they think their power is derived from their money. There is no nestness in that. And the technology which the founder is leveraging and using has a wildness about it that can't be managed. So I think it's an open question whether the founder survives these days, but it's absolutely critical to our culture, our national culture, our world culture. Founders cannot be killed, because when you kill them, more grow. I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about the founders that I know and love, and I want to help them survive. But the founder is immortal. No worries. Money, technology, the lack of creatives, they've been trying to kill founders since the beginning of time. They'll never win. Doesn't mean you might not be killed. Doesn't mean you might not survive. And those of us who work with you and with others who are founders that we admire, our job is to draw our sword. That's our job. That's what we're here for. If you're not going to be a founder, then for God's sakes, draw your sword on behalf of one. And by the way, I would put this in your toolkit. One of the founders' toolkits that you have, Tom, is that, again, however difficult you may be and challenging you may be, you engender a loyalty that goes very deep. And founders who do not have those who are loyal to them are doomed. Because a founder can't do it alone. So my question to you is this. Let me just flip it around on you for a minute. What does a founder do when they recognize they are compelled? We saw it in our breakout session. There were founders in that room that had yet not claimed their being founders, were on the verge of it, but were frightened because they're surrounded by a world that tells them, no business model, can't do that, no money, you're wrong. How does a founder, how does a creative keep his spirit alive in the early days when there's no help anywhere and no support? When friends and family are the only place you can find some kind of willingness, and even that is fraught. How does the founder stay alive in the early days? How did you do that with me, when you, in those very early days, when all you were trying to do was get vets jobs?
Anger.
Say more.
Just anger. That it didn't make. We just took the anger and formed a contrarian argument. So now everyone would say that there's something wrong with veterans. It's pretty much what all the marketing says, which is just insane, which is why they're struggling to recruit anyone now. Why would you join an organization that makes you wrong over time? Doesn't make any sense. When really they were just guilty about the war. That's my opinion. I think deep down, we also didn't win. Very interesting when you think of it like that. We didn't win. We took the argument of maybe there's nothing wrong with veterans, maybe there's everything wrong with society. And it's our job as veterans to improve society, like it's been every time throughout every cycle of war and peace. When the individuals come home from war, they become titans in industry. They fix the government. They bring a level of competence that's been missing, because they're now, in a lot of cases, they know what perspective is, and they're courageous. And society only grows when courageous people lead it. Courageous people aren't someone that runs at a machine gun. Sometimes they're that, but most of the time they're the people that say that's enough. I used to tell a story about how I was a monster. And that was the avatar, so to speak, of my anger. Because I don't really hold anything. I'm actually quite introverted and restrained. But I had to become like this thing that kept kicking and punching and cutting through. And we used to tell this story, and the story was really simple. It's like, this veteran unemployment problem and this veteran suicide problem, and the one in three going on unemployment at 25 and then going on opiates and then dying is happening. We have all the numbers. We know it is. And the problem is it's a terrifying problem. Some of your strongest in society are taking themselves out. What does that mean? Right? So I tell this story that, if I'm sitting in Veterans Affairs, or I'm sitting in the cabinet office, or I'm sitting at home and my partner's a veteran, God, I wish this just all blows over. And, I'm going to put my hand between my legs and I'm just going to hope that this just goes away. And, and you know why? And they do it because it's easier. And I don't blame them.
Right.
And then guess what happens? The whole fucking house of cards falls. And there's only one person left that you can deal with when that happens. And that's a monster. Someone that is a controlled monster. That's angry, that acts fortuitously, but will strike down anything in their way to cut the decay, the gangrene, and the death to survive and keep the organism moving.
Right.
And I became
So
that
let me ask-
monster, and that's how I did it.
Yep.
I was an outwardly angry man with a suit of armor, but on the inside, I was calm, composed, and methodical.
Right.
But there are parts of me that became that person. And
So let me ask you something.
I don't know if it was a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the way in which you can say it's a good thing is you built one of the fastest growing companies in the Southern Hemisphere, and you started to get veterans jobs, and instead of killing themselves, they became powerful members of society. So there's no question about the fact that the consequence of that transformation helped others. My question to you is, for those who are listening to you, who do not have the crucible of war, who do not have the terrific cauldron from which that anger can be drawn and transformed, how do they survive? How do they convert their experience into the fuel that powers the engine of what they want to found? If they don't come from the intensity of war and that kind of trauma and risk and victory and loss, how does the founder keep from dreaming his life away? Even though he's compelled, he doesn't know how to get started.
I don't think it has anything to do with war. I think an angry soldier is a soon-to-be-dead soldier.
Right.
So it's got nothing to do with my previous experience.
So the question still stands, though, whether I framed it poorly or not. The question stands, and that is, you know, what do they do? How do they fuel their engine?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. I don't even know. I don't know if it was worth it.
Say that again. You don't know what?
I don't know if any of it was worth it. I don't think
Right.
it was. So I can't articulate that to someone. You know, I don't think it was worth it.
And when you say
I really
it wasn't
don't.
worth it, do you mean the founding of your company or war?
The company.
Yeah, it wasn't worth it to found that company.
Not for the things that I had to do. Not for the sacrifices that I had to make. No.
So then what do you think of founders? Do you think founders should get out before they break their hearts? Or are their hearts already broken? I mean, what's your advice to founders as one who's saying, I don't even know if I would have done what I did? Why do you give a shit about founders? Why are we here on this call?
I'm sick of them to be made the villain. How do you think
Well,
I help?
that's part of what we're going to explore in these coming weeks, don't you think?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know if it was worth it. I really don't. I really don't know. I I just meet more and more broken people. So,
Right.
to me, it just seems like the veteran thing all over again.
Yeah. And
Don't
yet,
you?
isn't it? Well, no, actually, remember, I'm, I mean, I'm in a different place because I am not cursed. I'm not cursed with that founder's powerful trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm intrigued by and interested in is that at the very moment that you don't know, at the very moment you say it may not be worth it, or it wasn't worth it, at that very, very moment, I watch you talk to people and provide them with hope and courage and authority in a way that is quite remarkable. I have the privilege of being in close with you, with founders. And I'm learning how to listen to founders and to serve founders. And the founders themselves are learning that they're not crazy, that they have that fire in them, that they have their own source of anger, which is a transformatory anger. Anger unchecked and bled out is a risky business, but anger is the power of transformation. And I see you at the very moment of your despair being more useful to people than you can possibly imagine. Do you not see that?
I think most people that are founders are probably useful. So,
Right.
well, what else am I going to do?
Well, there you go, my friend. There's our first tool right there. That is the first piece of the puzzle.
It's just really, but I really don't. I don't really think it was worth it. No, I really don't.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Here's the beautiful thing.
I would say that I have more conversations of it not being worth it than I have of conversations being worth it.
Yeah. But I have a piece of wisdom for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not your call to make. It's not your call to make.
Maybe.
You don't know because you can't assess from where you are. It's not your call to make.
It wouldn't matter though.
Yeah, it matters.
The world doesn't. The world doesn't relieve your depression for you.
Yeah, that I completely agree. But what I'm telling you is, when you say, "Was it worth it?" that is not your call to make. Are you saying you're in pain and you wish the pain would stop? You betcha. Are you talking about the depression and despair of not being where you thought you would be because you are being vilified as a founder for things?
I don't think it matters. I don't even care about that. I think I have a bigger issue with the idea that the bigger problem I have is people don't really want to change because the resume equates to ego. So it means that more people are not learners than more people are learners. And what problem that creates is the machines will eventually beat those people.
Yeah.
And no one's going to kill. They're not going to kill the people. People are useful. So it's just going to create a version of weird technocratic slavery. Now, you might think that's a really crazy idea, but I don't think it is.
Not at all. I mean, aren't you seeing it already?
People already spend hours on their phone taking in meaningless content. If you don't think that's a version of it, I don't know what you think it is. Yeah. So I
agree. I agree.
So the real issue I've got with is finding out that most people don't want to learn. It's got nothing to do with the idea of where I could be. It's like the same question of, how did you deal with the fact that most people in education won't ask you a question? That's ludicrous. I would just walk away. Like I would stop. I just don't, like, I would just be like, this is absurd. This is crazy. Like it's absolutely insane. It's true, fantastic, but it's crazy. Like that's an illness, Ken.
Yeah. And so what is your purpose in this world? To name the illness and despair of it?
I don't know.
Or to
I'm
move?
just saying that what I'm saying is it's not about where I was or how much money I earned. I didn't give a shit about that. It was figuring out that most people don't want to be a learner.
Right. But you just characterized me as telling you that it was about where you were or how much money you make. I never said any of that. What I'm saying to you is you're naming the illness, and because you're a creative, you don't have any other choice but to address that illness. To say that most people aren't learners is true, but that's not true for all. It's not all. And your job is to find partners and collaborators and students and mentors who are learners, because you're a learner, and it's lonely being a learner. Lonely. Because you always have to turn back to learning. You can't ever stand on the certitude of teaching, explaining, knowing. Knowing, N-O-ing. That's what knowing is. It's N-O, it's know. It's been that way since the beginning of time. Our job in this life is to find our compadres and do what we can. The technocrats have been moving on us since we came out of the caves. And we have you are a student of history, know that there's been vast suffering and vast annihilation by those non-learners who want to control. Prison guards, we got it. But you're a convict. I'm a convict. People listening to this are listening because they're convicts. We owe it to them to stay in the game and to keep working. And you don't have a choice. That's why I laughed and said, there's your first tool. You don't have a choice. You can despair all you want. You can be depressed all you want. You can blame the world all you want, and you're right. But you have no choice but to work on behalf of that small group of learners who constantly looks to transform the world. You don't have a choice.
I think
you're stubborn. You're stubborn right now, and you don't have a choice.
I'm not stubborn. I'm just curious. I have seen the fight be dulled out of people.
Yeah, you bet.
So I don't think that can necessarily be a choice. Like I think some have a choice. I think others, it's the wrong time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So what I would say, my question to you is, isn't the founder's first tool to face themselves in the mirror and say, is this the right time? You didn't do that with me. You dove in, you used anger.
I think you're hitting the line, but it's a different way. You got to think about it a different way. It's you can't think of it as is it the right time for me to do this? Is the wrong way of thinking about it. It's how can I advance human consciousness on this issue? And I can advance it. And if it's the wrong time and I get killed off, I run out of money or I run out of will. Will to win is something that I think is very important that's missing in founders. The military drives it at every step, but we come back to that. I run out of will, I run out of firepower, I run out of money, I do it wrong, or the market doesn't want it. But the idea is right. I sort of just had this concept of, this is important work. Maybe we could push the idea forward enough that someone with more infrastructure and more resources and can pick up the baton and go further.
Yep.
That's that idea of if we can advance further into the abyss, that someone can eventually see the way out of it. That's a noble idea.
Yep.
You should be comfortable in dying before knowing it was the right thing to do. As long as you truly believe that it's of benefit or value to those around you. And it's like the idea of I believe in potential of someone's ability to learn versus their ability to comprehend what they've already learned is pretty much all with you and me did. The idea that your potential to learn is more important than what you've already learned. Because the speed of the access to content is drastically increased. So, RAM is more important than your hard drive. That's a noble idea to push forward.
Yeah. Now look, this is, for this conversation, these last 2.5 minutes are the essence of what I hear you saying. They are the expression. They are something that the founder must and can ask himself or herself at the start.
Yeah.
Is what I want to do going to advance human consciousness? Because that's the sustaining fire that keeps the engine lit.
Yeah. So the way I sort of conceptualize it for people the first time is I say, look, why don't you pick an idea that could create value for 50 years minimum, and it's profitable in the first 10. Then that's the thing that you should run at. Whatever comes out first in that list. It sort of works. It gives people a frame.
Yeah, very helpful frame.
I think yeah. But
look, I think
do founders deserve divorce? Do they deserve to be under-economized? Do they deserve all the losses that they get from that approach? I don't think so. I actually don't think it's that hard to understand them. But everyone they want to avoid and misunderstand them.
And why do you think they want to avoid and misunderstand them?
Well, how could you live near that nobility?
Right.
You don't have any.
Right.
Like, I want to advance humankind. What are you doing?
Right.
I'm getting some groceries.
Right.
I'm managing this spreadsheet. I'm reading my boss's emails.
Yep. And so it is extraordinarily important to my own survival that I project onto you an arrogance and an inflationary sense of destiny and language and all the ways in which I can defend myself against your proximity to advancing human consciousness. It's
founders' lives don't fall apart when they're wrong, by the way.
Yeah, I got it.
Their lives fall apart when they're right.
Right.
Because if you're like, I want to advance humanity, and then you do it, then everyone that's hedged their emotional bets, like, good luck, you try for a few years, all of a sudden has an emotional breakdown because they have to address a fundamental question. Should I have been more on the rocket ship?
Yeah.
And two, what am I doing to advance humanity?
Right.
So you'll find that they've broken homes, broken families, broken finances. And I don't think they deserve that. I really don't. I really, really, really don't. I don't. No one goes, whoa, I guess I was wrong. Good work. That'd be an interesting conversation.
Look, I think there's no question about the fact that the next conversation should start right here in terms of if that founder is willing to answer that first question and believe and is compelled by that first question, what do they do next? And our next conversation is literally that. What do they do next?
Well, what do you do differently with founders now that you understand some of this perspective?
I'm present to them. I see them. I didn't before. I was a handicapper before. This guy's got it. This gal doesn't. This gal's got to play. This guy doesn't. I was a handicapper. I was a guy who made his bets. And now I realize I was betting blind all the time. I was also interested in the advancement of human consciousness, but I told myself that it had to be practical, achievable, that it had its parameters. I didn't see the madness of it. I didn't see the wildness of it. And now I do. And so I don't know what I do differently, but I know that I listen differently. I see them differently. I ask them different questions. It's part of what I want to do in our next call, because we've gone on along here, but it's everything. Everything's changed. For all the reasons we've talked about in this last hour. How can it not? I don't have any other choice. There's nothing else for me to do. I can't do anything differently. You wake up, you can't go back to sleep. So thank you for taking some time with me today.
Likewise. I don't know if they can be saved, Kemp. I really don't.
Well, we have no other choice, my friend. There's nothing you can do with that question.
There's other things I could do. That's the point I'm getting to.
But
I think the point I want to end on is that you can wear your warriors down enough that they don't want to fight anymore.
Right. And when they're worn down because they don't want to fight anymore, they become wizards. And that's what they become, something very different. They drop their sword and they pick up their staff. And that's where you're going. The point is, you don't have to do this anymore. Absolutely. There is a lot you can do and a lot you're going to do. But you're still driven by advancing the consciousness of the world. That's still, you've got two little babies, weeks old, barely a week old. It's their world that you're working for. You don't have any other choice, nor do I.